The
Good.
exhaustless seeings of the unsleeping mind, letterings of its contact with the invisible, surrounded him with countless pointing signs, the voices of 1,000 realms of life, missioned to him her mighty messages.
Again, of course, we are in the book of the traveler of the worlds, the world's there. So it's only the first canto, the world's there. And what he is experiencing here is this unsleeping mind that has exhaustless seeings. The unsleeping mind is open to everything, so it doesn't have any seeings that get exhausted. And its letterings of its contact with the invisible surrounded him with countless pointing signs. And what is it telling him when he sees this? The voices of 1,000 realms of life missioned to him her mighty messages. Missioned here means sent forth to him.
Okay.
Continue.
The heaven hints that invade our earthly lives, the dire imaginations dreamed by hell, which, if enacted and experienced here, our dulled capacity soon would cease to feel, or our mortal frailty could not long endure, were set in their sublime proportions there.
Two pronunciation problems. You
Uh-huh.
said are dulled. It's our dulled capacity.
Hour, okay. Okay.
And we have to be very clear on that.
Hour, okay.
Or our mortal frailty. Frailty.
Frailty,
Frailty.
frailty. Okay.
Good. Read those 4 lines again.
Sure.
Or, yeah.
The heaven hints, okay. The heaven hints that invade our earthly lives.
You got it now. You see the difference?
Yes.
You were saying are,
Mhm.
and that we have to stop.
Hour, okay.
Good. Carry on.
The dire imaginations dreamed by hell, which, if enacted and experienced here, our dulled capacity soon would cease to feel, or our mortal frailty could not long endure, were set in their sublime proportions there.
So we have 2 things happening, you see.
Mhm.
We have heaven hints
Mhm.
that can come into our lives, and we also have dire imaginations that are dreamed by hell. Dire are dreadful, terrible imaginations dreamed by hell. And then he says, what happens if these 2 things were enacted and experienced here? Well, 2 things can happen. Our dulled capacity wouldn't feel them any longer, or our mortal frailty couldn't endure them.
Hmm.
And they were set in their sublime proportions there where he's looking, where he's experiencing these things. So you got it now?
Yes, sir, but only thing I'm not able to understand what these dire imaginations would be, dire imaginations dreamed by hell. So are these the, what they say, People would be.
Okay. These dire imaginations, if they're dreamed by hell, they're things of horror, suffering, fear, disaster, misfortune. All those kinds of things can be dreamed by hell. They wouldn't be heaven hints that invade our earthly lives. But if they were enacted, even if they were experienced here, we have such dull capacity that we wouldn't even feel them any longer. Or our mortal frailty could not endure them. And therefore they were set in their sublime proportions there, where he's seeing what's happening. And we have to continue a little to understand more. There lived out.
And so, Narad sir, one last thing. So when they say they were set in their sublime proportions, sublime is like basically it's as if moving away, right?
They're greatest proportions. They're perfect proportions.
Perfect proportions. Okay.
Sublime in that sense.
Okay.
Highest proportions.
Okay.
Most eminent proportions. So they're set there. They're not lower things. They're very high proportions, but they're negative and they're positive.
Positive, both. Okay.
Negative is heaven hints, and a negative is dire imaginations, and heaven hints are positive.
Got it.
Good. Tough section, but we got it.
Yeah. They lived out in their self-born atmosphere. They resumed their topless pitch and native power.
Yes, but you see, it's not their lived out. It's their lived out in their self-born atmosphere. So they are lived out there in their self-born atmosphere.
Okay, lived out is together. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. They're lived out in their.
Good. You got it.
Okay. They're lived out in their self-born atmosphere. They resumed their topless pitch and native power. Their fortifying stress upon the soul bit deep into the ground of consciousness, the passion and purity of their extremes, the absoluteness of their single cry, and the sovereign sweetness or violent poetry of their beautiful or terrible delight.
So it's a very important passage, isn't it? So we have to go back a little bit and see what they're saying here, what he's saying. They have a self-born atmosphere. No one made them experience this. And they're living out in that self-born atmosphere, resuming their topless pitch and their native power, as well as their fortifying stress upon the soul. And all of that bit deep into the ground of consciousness, the passion and purity of their extremes, the absoluteness of their single cry, and the sovereign sweetness or violent poetry. What a line, huh? Sovereign sweetness or violent poetry of their beautiful or terrible delight. So here we just had previously the heaven hints and the dire imaginations by hell. Yes. And Sri Aurobindo is continuing this vision of things. So they are now resuming their topless pitch, the pitch that has no top, and their native power. They're living that out in their self-born atmosphere. Even they're fortifying, they're invigorating stress upon the soul.
Mhm.
Bit deep into the ground of consciousness. What did they bite? The passion and purity of their extremes. Again, extremes that he's seeing. The absoluteness of their single cry and the sovereign sweetness or violent poetry. See how important that is? These opposites
Yep.
of their beautiful or terrible delight. And I think that's probably a good time for us. We have 5 minutes left. Can you begin to read from where we started?
Sure.
96.
Yep. The exhaustless scenes of the unsleeping mind, letterings of its contacts with the invisible, surrounded him with countless pointing signs, the voices of 1,000 realms of life, mission to him her mighty messages. The heaven hints that invade our earthly lives, the dire imaginations dreamed by hell, which, if enacted and experienced here,
A little slower, which, if enacted and experienced here,
which, if enacted and experienced here, our dulled capacity soon would cease to feel, or our mortal frailty could not long endure, were set in their sublime proportions there. They're lived out in their self-born atmosphere. They resumed their topless pitch and native power, their fortifying stress upon the soul, bit deep into the ground of consciousness, the passion and purity of their extremes, the absoluteness of their single cry, and the souring sweetness or violent poetry of their beautiful or terrible delight.
very powerful passage, huh? That Ashwapati is experiencing. He's seeing all of these things as he's on this world stair, viewing this cosmos and seeing the negatives and the positives at the same time. You got it all clear now?
Yes,
we've gone over it.
Yeah, I understood it. Yes,
So see you next week, and we'll continue with the Zoom.
sure.
It's fine. Thank you so much.
All right, Narad sir.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Namaste.
Namaste.